let's open up with this because this is a great topic. You know, you mentioned the hardware. I want you to get into some specifics of why you think it's sooner than later. I'm going to start off with why I think it needs to be sooner than later. Okay. The one thing that we have seen Microsoft do over the years, ladies and gentlemen, is be ahead of the curve, right? Be too forward thinking. Zune is a perfect example. Now, I say the word Zune, and Mrs. Boom, she sticks that out and look like this because she still uses her Zune. She got the boom box. She has the old school joint. She even has the HD one that came out, the color one, a little bit later, right before they ended its life cycle. And look, they were ahead on that. They were ahead on a lot of things. I mean, look, perfect example is, do we all use virtual assistants to ask the time or the weather? We do. And Microsoft was ahead of that, and they kind of killed it. This is one of those situations, Fuzzy, that I almost feel that if they drag their heels too long in the ground, someone is going to beat them to the punch in regards to what you expect from a handheld. Now, look, there are a lot of them out there. I've owned two of them. I bought the Steam Deck day one, and I'm not a Steam guy. I wound up selling it privately. And then, of course, I bought the ROG Ally, which was even worse. Oh, my God. So, of course, now I still have it. I'm not selling it, FYI. I actually sent it out, believe it or not, to Kay Asante, who did a lot of incredible groundwork for this Neanderthal of a man. I'm talking about myself here, who is not a PC guy. I'm just not. It's just, I just want to plug and play. So he set it up with a bunch of ROMs. Of course, my favorite game, literally of all time, is Aliens versus Predator, the side-scrolling arcade beat-em-up from Capcom from 100 years ago. And I beat that at least twice a year. It's one, like, I know all of us have that game that we all go back to at least once a year. For me, it's that. And I beat it twice a year. I have it on a Raspberry Pi that I just plug in. I sit there for 2-3 hours. I play it. I beat it, and I keep it moving. And I go through all the characters. Like, I know it's like nerdy, but it's one of my favorite games. But from a technical point of view, we know that ROG Ally X just came out, and you know, listen, it was $100 and something more than the original, and you got a little bit more battery life, you got a little bit more storage. If you talk to Kay Asante, he absolutely says that it's not worth a penny what they have, you know, with the you know, the iteration that they have put out now. You talk to someone like John Wolf, and he loves it, right? He's absolutely in love with this thing. But you also have the Steam Deck making, you know, obviously Valve is making some big moves. Their OS is going to start making the rounds, and it's going to be on everything, right? And that's potentially beating Microsoft to the punch, so to speak. Now, they did do an update to their Xbox OS, and it is supposedly a bit better based on some people that I've spoken to. I haven't personally used it. But Fuzzy, where we get into the dragging of the heels situation is that handhelds, especially in the more powerful conversation of handhelds, are now. If Microsoft were to wait until 2026, I'm not saying that they couldn't enter the market because it is going to be an Xbox handheld. They could. I personally think, though, that is a little bit too far into the future for me. I want to get your opinion. Obviously, we get somebody else in here. We'll talk to, or maybe Hargeet can get in here. We'll get his opinion on it, whether or not that's going to happen. And of course, we'll get the chat involved because the chat is obviously a major player here on Double Barrel Gaming. But you know, you made mention of you seem to think it's sooner than later. I hope you're right. I would like to see this come out for holiday of 2025 because there are some big games coming out, and you could market this thing with the next Call of Duty. Hey, Call of Duty on the go. You can market this with the next Fable. If Fable, hey, you want a magical adventure? Go sit in the park and play your handheld. You know what I'm saying? Just that kind of, and that's kind of commercials that they do anyway. Let's get your thoughts on that. Why do you think that it's on the way sooner than later? And do you think it's potentially a quote unquote missed mark if they wait until 2026?
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces right now. And I think the biggest thing is they probably weren't expecting Steam to be as aggressive as they are right now. Steam came out with the Steam Deck. That's all great. It allowed you to dual boot, so that way you can have the Steam OS and you can run Windows in the background if you choose, and switch between the two rather seamlessly. I think the big thing that they were expecting is that Steam would be happy with just doing that, and that they could find a way to find their own niche where their handheld could have Steam on the back end, so that way you would have access to your Steam library. Because if you're doing like the dual boot stuff, you have your Windows Store stuff that you could purchase, and you have your Steam stuff that you could purchase. And it's easy enough to take the Windows stuff and put it into the Steam launcher and make it seem like you bought it through Steam. Um, it makes it more of a easier console like experience at that point. But right now, Steam is going, full boat to the wind kind of thing with making their Steam OS usable, not just on like desktop PCs, because you have people out here like Everborn who's basically turned their PC into a console experience. Few hoops that you have to jump through, but he made it so it's almost as seamless by just pushing the console button or the controller button, cutting the PC on, and it launches as if it's a console. It takes a few steps to do it, but it is as close as you can create a like boundless console that has all ultimate power. And that was mainly through using Steam and a few other things. Right now, Steam is also looking at what is kind of their competition with the ROG Ally, the Legion Go. I forget the other one that makes the claw, but like there's a bunch of handhelds out there right now, and they're like, what if we put Steam OS on there? Because
Yep.
if I won't say everybody, but a majority of people that have had the Steam Deck in hand and have had the ROG Ally in hand, the one advantage that they always talk about with the Steam Deck is that it has more of this seamless console-like experience. It's like you pick it up, you turn it on, you can play your games. There's no like, turn these drivers on or off kind of thing. Well, you can do all of that stuff. You can manipulate things to make it run at 60 frames or better, or have a little bit better, resolution and things like that. But the out-of-the-box experience is so much smoother on the Steam Deck in comparison to the ROG Ally. Part of that is due to Windows not being the most gaming friendly on these handhelds, but Microsoft is working at that. But with Steam seeing that opportunity and saying, hey, well, if we make an OS that somebody can put on their ROG Ally or on their Legion Go, hey, that's almost like we sold the Steam Deck, because they're still probably going to buy their games from Steam.
Yeah.
Why not
it's
just
new customers, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think Xbox now, seeing that that's Steam's approach, they're now working a little bit harder and a little bit faster on the Xbox app as a mini format for like a handheld. So they're making the improvements for all the things that you see on your console now, where you have your friends list, do party invites, do chat, and things like that. Even though that's not the gaming aspect, but the things that make the whole gaming experience fun, that's what Microsoft is leaning into a little bit harder, because they have a little bit more of an advantage in that regard. Yes, there is chat on Steam, but not as many people use that as frequently as you would like party chat on the Xbox. But with that being said, Microsoft is working to make sure that stuff is kind of buttoned up. So for the people that have the ROG Ally and have a Legion Go or any of those other handhelds, or maybe even their Steam Deck, and let's say they're not liking the Steam OS because they can't play Destiny online. And there's a handful of games that software, the Proton software that Steam uses, is not compatible for online like hacking checks or like the stuff to make sure you're not doing like what you're not supposed to for these multiplayer games. Some of that stuff
You mean
doesn't
like
quite
aimbots, possibly?
right. So a lot of that stuff, even if the person isn't doing any of that, it still falls under that category sometimes. And Steam is still working hard with those developers to make sure that those games are playable. But it seems like almost like a cat and mouse game to some extent, at least at this point. But Microsoft has that advantage where their stuff hasn't been as, red flagged as far as somebody using Windows to play, the games on a handheld, primarily because Windows is what a lot of people expect people on PC that are gaming to use. So that's where they got to lean into a little bit heavier. That's the thing that they're trying to make sure that the ROG Ally is out there and the Legion goes out there. Instead of choosing this new Steam OS, maybe pick the mini version of the Windows format. So that way it is another Xbox screen. Yes, it's not technically an Xbox, but it is one of those things where they're logging into a Microsoft account. If they have a game account with Microsoft already, like their gamer tag, their gamer score, and all of that stuff carries over. A lot of the stuff as far as Microsoft rewards points or even Game Pass reward points and perks and things like that will all transfer over. So that's a better way to lock in that customer in that ecosystem before they start being pulled a little bit further away with Steam. So I think in that effort, seeing that Steam is being a little bit more aggressive, not to the point where Microsoft has to worry, but it is an area that Microsoft kind of had the road to themselves to kind of play. Oh, we are a console and a PC, device blended, and this might be the advantage for a lot of people out there that are scared to go full PC, or for those that are want more than just being tied to the console at the TV. They want to be able to play on the go or play at their desktop or whatever. That's where Microsoft can take charge and stuff. So I think because of all that, they are putting everything on an accelerated program to kind of get that buttoned up. I'm hoping we see a handheld in 2025. Now, there's the other moving parts are going to be chipsets and things like that. I think they're going ARM. And the main reason why I think they're going ARM, what better way to circumvent the third-party licensing deal without it being egregious to the third parties? Where the big drawback that you run into now is Microsoft would love to have dual entitlement across the board with every game that they sell you, whether it's their first party, which is pretty much in place as is, or any of the third party stuff that they sell. So that way you buy the console version and the PC version in one clip. You play that handheld. You can play it either as the PC or the console version, or your existing console library is still playable on that same device natively, as opposed to having it where you're streaming it from the console. And I think that's the approach that they can do, because Microsoft being good with software, they're already working, although there's a few hiccups with things like Halo right now on those ARM chips or the Snapdragon chips that are out there now. But it's a matter of them getting that figured out, because with the Snapdragon chip, you're going to have much better battery life than what you're seeing in any of these handhelds currently. Like handhelds now, even with bigger batteries like the new ROG Ally X or whatever it's called, you're seeing somewhere closer to 6 hours. But if you're playing this full 1080p 60 frames with all the bells and whistles that you can fit through that handheld, you're probably looking at closer to 4, maybe a little bit less. In some cases 2 to 4 hours is the battery life. But with a Snapdragon chip on that same processing power, you're probably looking at your minimums will be somewhere around 6 hours, and you might be able to stretch it to 9 hours if you're playing like a side scroller or something like that that's not as intensive. So thinking that you can have that kind of battery life in a handheld is a big advantage whenever that tech kind of reaches the road kind of thing, which I think they're not too far off from that. They could have something spun up by next holiday kind of deal, not this holiday, but holiday 25. And I think you can still have a next gen chipset and it not be too much of a detriment to that handheld, especially if they are going to do a docking setup where the dock will kind of do some of the heavier lifting to up-res the graphics with an AI chip or something like that. So it's almost like a built-in DLSS, or as I think they're calling it, like SSR or something like that they're working on now. I think that will be the go-between, so that handheld could be like your Switch, hook it to your TV, still see things in 4K, still have things run at 60, and because it's plugged in, you don't have to worry about battery life or any of the clawbacks as far as the power consumption, since it's going to be plugged into the wall at that point. So I think 25 is when they release the handheld, lock you into the ecosystem, attract more customers with portable stuff, and then they have the bigger, badder, in front of your TV type of console, which some people are already speculating that it won't be, kind of subsidized like they have been in the past, where it's kind of sold at a loss. So you may not see $500 consoles again. You might wind up seeing $600 or $700 ones. But then again, that would not be targeted at the mainstream. The mainstream would still probably be the handheld, which I'm figuring can be 400 or less. But as far as the next, ultimate or powerful console, that you might see a $699 on that, and that's geared for the hardcore or for the enthusiasts that doesn't want a PC but wants almost PC level, graphics and fidelity and stuff like that. So I think that's where they're headed. Hoping the handheld is, viable for next year, and we get to see how you can play your console games and PC games on one device, take it wherever you want, And if you want to, play it on your TV at home, you can just hook it to the hub or to some sort of, hub-like device, and play it on the TV, and it looked like it's, like your Series X or better on your TV kind of thing. So fingers crossed that's what they do.